There are bridges, bridges in the sky, they are shining in the sun. They are stone and steel and wood and wire, they can change two things to one. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than they are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than there are canyons, they are yawning in the they are rank and better anger, they are all the boy who flies. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and sober holding, and they're oh so very high. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and sober holding, and they're oh so very high. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross with a song. Let us find another canyon, let us ride. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're up and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and we are on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're up and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and we are on our way. We will tell them building bridges and we are on our way.
We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Thank you, Bill Staines, again for allowing us to use your song Bridges for Bridges programming. Of course, your song says pretty much all the things we're trying to get across on our program, but most people don't hear the words. Okay, this is World Call In. We had some people talk to us last week about the last program we did. And Susan said to me last night, she said, I've got this idea for a program. And with us, by the way, is Dennis Carius. Hello, Dennis. And
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Dennis.
He's on the phone with us. And then we have Susan Coleman. I'm Jeff Beller. This is Bridges Program. It's brought to you by something that we really feel is the most important thing we can put out in the language. And you don't have to buy anything or join a group. You just have to try to understand that we need a measurement, and the measurement says all humanity has to have their basic needs met, their education, food, and shelter, for a minimal amount of their life, a day or a week. So we say that 1 hour a day or 1 day a week will give you your basic minimums needed for life. And then you have 23 more hours a day or 7 or 6 more days a week for your wants. So your wants are different than your needs, and we're suggesting that all humanity, no matter where you are in the world, has their basic needs met. Very important. And if we can do that and we put that in the vocabulary, we call it the HRM, Human Renewable Energy Measure, HRM.org. THEHREM.org. Basic needs will be met, and we can pretty much fix the problems, stop the wars, come together, and maybe we can have a planet that is not divided up into 200 different countries by man's edict or law. Maybe we can go ahead and work in cooperation, like the United Kingdom got the kings together and said, let's stop fighting amongst ourselves. Let's cooperate, because they started to compete for lands. So they got together and they said, we're going to be united. And if you notice, a lot of the companies, the corporations who are in competition, like we heard today, this morning, that one of the Staples and Office Max, or one of the others, whatever they call themselves. They're coming together, and why? Because they don't want to compete. They want to come together to cooperate. Now, the reason why they're cooperating, of course, is to gouge you and I for more money. But the reality is that if we all came together and stopped competing and cooperating with each other around the world, people wouldn't die. And that's the point of the human renewable energy measure. And that brings us to the topic of today. And Susan's, because I can't pronounce the guy's name, but Susan figured it out when I looked at some videos on it last night.
Well, you listened to other people's pronunciations, so we're going to pick up on that. I guess that's right.
So what is?
I don't know Italian. This was an Italian individual back, let's see, he lived from 1848 to 1923. So the 20s, essentially, 1920s. He was an adult. Wilfredo Pareto. The E is pronounced.
And it's called the Pareto what?
Pareto Efficiency, or Pareto Optimality. And he was an engineer, an Italian engineer and economist. And he thought up this concept about, and he was in the context of his economic efficiency thoughts and income distribution, etc. The way that, it's impossible, really. I mean, it's just like interpreting the Bible. You and Dennis were talking about that before we started broadcasting. I'm sure there are writings of his, and you can read them all through, and they've been translated from the Italian.
Like Bucky Fuller.
Coming to us now, and you can look at YouTube presentations of present-day economists telling us what Pareto efficiency is and what it isn't, and how it's interpreted today. I think it's up for interpretation still, because I would like to interpret it in terms of our concept, the human renewable energy measure, but the definition that you find most frequently, the simple definition is that Pareto efficiency is a state of allocation of resources in which it is impossible to make any one individual better off without making at least one individual worse off. Now that definition, I found when I heard it a couple of months ago, I wrote that down real quick. I don't know where I heard it or read it or whatever, but it got me excited, because somebody at some point had been, I didn't even know he was back in the 20s at the time, and I didn't know anything about. I just researched that a little more recently. But that definition, in the context of what Jeff and I have been thinking about, and what Dennis has been helping us with on this programming, the human renewable energy measure, that if inserted into our economic system would guarantee food, shelter, and education for a minimal amount of life work on the part of each individual. I think, that got me excited when I heard that someone had been thinking around those terms, that to try to get an equilibrium or an efficiency that that one individual, some change in the distribution of resources to one individual would not harm another individual, that there would be an optimal, not perfect, but an optimal balance that was possible. And he was thinking about this. But I was quickly disabused of my hopeful interpretation of that definition by reading further in various parts of the internet about how this statement is interpreted. Quickly, they say it would be invalid to treat Pareto efficiency as equivalent to social optimality. So where my mind jumped, they're saying, no, Pareto efficiency does not require an equitable distribution of wealth. An economy in which the wealthy hold the vast majority of resources can be Pareto efficient. This possibility is inherent in the definition of Pareto efficiency. Often, the status quo is Pareto efficient. So they're pounding that 3 times in different ways of saying it. Don't even go there. Don't even begin to reinterpret what Wilfredo Pareto was writing back then. I don't know how many people have read his writing. I'm sure it's been translated from the Italian. There could be some errors in there, but I see potential for
what the HRAM is.
Yeah, in terms of this definition.
I want to elaborate on that. What the HRAM, the Human Renewable Energy Measure, is, it is not distribution of wealth equally to all people.
No, it's a way of protecting individuals from damaging other individuals.
Right, and it's also, it allows people to use nature's natural resources.
Now, let me just suggest along the lines that I was just saying, that what I'm trying to suggest is that we're trying to do with our mindset and our hope for the Human Renewable Energy Measure someday becoming part of our economics. We're trying to do what the status quo has done with every economic definition that's available. They are going to slant it towards what they feel is beneficial to the way they would like to continue to conduct economics. And right now, our economics is based on what is called social Darwinism. And Darwin had nothing to do with social Darwinism. That was an interpretation of his writing to the benefit of the way that people who created social Darwinism hoped that the future of economics would be, which would mean that there are people in the general population. Social Darwinism would say that there are people within the population that are more worthy to live, more worthy to prosper than the rest. And this is the status quo right now. And so if you're interpreting every economic definition in terms of that notion, and this is a very, very old notion, social Darwinism, and we still are struggling with this today. And this is why we have a very small minority of people worldwide who are extremely wealthy, and why they have such an inordinate amount of influence upon governments and economics and everyday life of every person on this planet. We're not saying that, we can't have revolutions and do the French Revolution all over again and chop people's heads off and things like that. That's ridiculous. But we can present ideas that can change everything, can change things for the better, because we're thinking about it, and we're trying to create another way of social agreement about how resources our natural resources should be dealt with and distributed worldwide. And you can go into your thoughts about natural resources.
I want this to be, I don't know how I can explain it any better. We are not suggesting that the Human Renewable Energy Measure is an equal distribution
of wealth. No, that's why this interested me.
Wealth is, and this is very similar to what he's talking about. We're saying there's enough natural resources because of the sun, as far as energy. Energy controls everything. It all comes down to energy. And the sun gives us everything we need for our survival. It gives us enough energy units to make food, enough energy units to make fresh water. And using the different things that human beings have to put together for shelter. They can be designed in energy units. We also have a brain, be it nature-given or God-given brain, that says that we should all share that, the technology, the knowledge, so the species can grow and also not destroy anything around them like we're doing now. The species now takes its smarts and we convert it to some kind of insane money system that destroys the air and water and the soil that we need to survive. That literally is going to wipe out humanity on this planet. And we're not saying that we should make it all equal. We're saying that using the natural resources, all humanity, we have to agree, have their basic needs met, their education, food, and shelter. Then you allow, and
those are the resources.
In the lifetime is 80 years because of today's figuring. The scientists we have to believe who study it. Now, not that they're smarter than we are. It's not that they're smarter. It's just that certain people choose to study certain things, and they appear to be smarter. There are certain people who, like we talked about this earlier, the guy who I need dig a trench for me is not stupid. He knows how to dig a trench. I need that guy more than I need my doctor in some cases. The doctor who might spend many, many years learning the parts of bodies to know what kind of drugs to give them or operate is not that much smarter or any smarter. He chooses as a human being
To specialize.
That's what his interests are.
Right.
The other interest may be someone who may want to go fishing, or they may want to go golfing, or they may want to grow gardens or be farmers. They're not stupider or smarter. It's the interest and the way the person educates themselves. And in most of the world, it costs you money. So if your family had money, they allow you to go to school, which makes you appear smarter. We have somebody running for office now who's got a lot of money, and he inherited that money. And it probably, if he never did a thing with it, if he just sat back and went to sleep for his life, he would have as much money as he did now. His investments just bankrupt and hurt a lot of people. So he's not smarter. He just has a lot of money, and he has these bogus things he went to school for to getting his diplomas, which mean nothing. They're man-made diplomas. This has nothing to do with how smart the person is. It's how he manipulates the system. So all humanity is basically the same. We have different wants. That's what makes human beings different. And we're saying that we all live about 80 years of age. We all need education, food, and shelter. And then so you work about a day a week or an hour a day, depending upon how you want to do that. And you have your basic needs met. That allows you either 6 more days for your wants that you prefer, or 23 more hours a day for your other want you may want, your wants. But we're not ever suggesting that everything is equal. We're saying that your wants change things. Your wants create ambition. Your wants create, if you want to call it, just enjoyment of life, enjoyment of nature. And that's human beings we haven't even begun, in my opinion. We haven't even begun to understand the mind and how we function. But I do know one thing, we have to stop it. Most people agree with this. We have to stop killing people. And then you have people who say, well, we got to get rid of the Muslims, or we got to get rid of the Jews, or we got to get rid of the blacks, or we got to get rid of the Chinese. This is insanity. We're one species. We have to work together. And that's why I brought up the thing today that Susan heard on the radio, that the two companies that sell, what do they call it, stuff, office
supplies,
are going to merge, because they say, why are we fighting with each other? Let's cooperate so we can make more money. Right. Again, the premise of why they're going to cooperate is
goes back to the kings.
Right, and that's
in
why you
Europe.
had United Kingdoms.
Right.
Because they said, why are we killing one another when we can cooperate
And
and
make even
control,
more.
and control the population through our kingdoms? And that's how you got the United Kingdom, by the way, which they softened it up and they called it Great Britain, and then they softened it up again and they called it England. And then you have the United States, who say, well, you're gonna have to unite and make everybody so we work together. But basically, we're the right-hand man of Great Britain,
The strong arm.
the strong arm of
England.
the United Kingdom, which is interesting. So we become the enforcers of the world because of Great Britain. So and then we keep on thinking, well, we beat them
And it's not just enforcers in terms of military might. We enforce the economic system.
and that's the important
And
thing.
it's conducted in the language of English, which is the language of commerce.
And Great Britain's time, Big Ben, or
But-
Greenwich Mean Time, is again part of the way the system has evolved.
But-
And we're not saying, by the way, we're not saying the system evolved badly. We're saying the
This is
system,
this is the
it's
way
time
it is.
for a change. We need to get the change, not in politics, because what controls politics is economics.
And let's follow another trend
Go
so
ahead.
that we can make.
Oh, I want to ask Dennis what he thinks so far.
Okay.
Dennis?
Dennis thinks both of you are correct.
Thank you. That's okay.
Were you able to get online yet, Dennis?
Wait, let me
Oh,
follow
no,
this thought
No,
process.
please keep going. I'll try to do that.
Okay.
I want to. Okay, you were. Now I've forgotten the trend that we had before.
We were talking about Great Britain. And
Yes, I know,
And we're
but-
coming together, and we want
Oh,
to
the
make,
politics. How does it affect the politics? And we're right in the middle of the preamble to a presidential election now, and so how does having a minority of extremely wealthy people in a country and a majority of not so wealthy and poor people, like right now in the United States, the 400, and these are statistics that I'm sure are changing all the time, but this is what I have right now. 400 of the wealthiest Americans have more wealth than half of all Americans combined. This is just the United States. So if you combine half of all the wealth of the American citizens, the 400 wealthiest families in America, in the United States, have more wealth than that. And over 60% of these extremely rich 400 Americans grew up in substantial privilege. More than half of them were born into their advantage of wealth, like one of our presidential candidates right now, at least one of them. And then how does this advantage perpetuate itself? And this is an interesting thing. It's called wealth condensation, and that's a term for it. Everything has a term, and it will grow whether or not the economy is doing well. It'll keep growing
because there's so much.
because it has so much
it
advantage,
always-
and the advantages are
It's like a
specific.
snowball, even if the snowball is, if it's warm outside and the snow's melting, as the snowball rolls down the snow, it picks up stuff. As long as there's snow on the ground, as long as there's things
But
to pick
how
up.
does it do this? And this is what I
It's
want to speak to.
momentum.
That's true. Momentum is a part of it, but the momentum can keep going because of several different, 3 different things that are specific things. There are more things, I'm sure, and there are always exceptions, as we know, people who can leap over the obstacles. But this is a very, very small minority of people, for whatever reasons. But what we're talking about, that within the way that we conduct economics at this present time, a small initial inequality, over time, it must widen into a larger inequality. And this is perpetuated because of the three particular interactions or opportunities for the wealthy to condense even more their wealth. And one is called oligarchy. And this is the correlation between the rich being given high paid employment. The rich socialize with the rich, they go to universities together, they are in communication with each other, they promote each other within their corporations, within their educational systems, within their, I mean, this is, we know there is a hierarchy with the way that education is done. If you can afford it, you can go and be exposed to the best educators, the best teachers. The second thing is meritocracy. This is a way of awarding people with merit, with credentials, with degrees, and according to what they've displayed as their abilities. And it can raise somebody who isn't wealthy into the wealthy status this way. But most of the time, wealthy people are awarding credentials and degrees and merits on each other because they are already within the context of being able to afford the education in the institutions where the best possible teachers end up, they say. But it doesn't even matter if these are the best possible teachers because they've got already the credibility in our minds, in our social structure, that these are the best. These are the best institutions. If you have a degree from this, you are the best.
It's what your belief system
It's a
is.
belief system.
Right.
And of course, this allows these individuals who have gotten those kind of degrees to get the best employment, the higher paid employment. And then they also have an opportunity to save their money and become richer. And then finally, there is the word plutocracy, and that's the influence that extremely rich people have over government, which is very disproportionate. And they disproportionately influence government to favor their interests. Increasing their wealth is one of those interests, putting themselves in positions of power. And this, we see right now in the high cost of running for any office in this country. And right now, you need $1 billion at least to run for president.
Personally, $1 billion.
Or access to it somehow.
Yeah.
And
that was cool.
so when you consider that, these three things can either be operating, an individual can be using one of them, two of them, or all of them. They are very compatible with each other for compounding the effects of wealth, for concentration of wealth even further by practicing these kind of.
By the way, but all these words that Susan is using is that's what I think that's also part of the problem with our thinking process is if we label it, we've now figured it out.
No, you don't figure it out by labeling it. You label it just like you measure things. You try to have a definition to start with.
Like the oligarchy and the plutocracy and
the meritocracy.
It's all connected. It's a way of controlling the unfair practices to hurt other human beings. It's the opposite of what this topic was about today.
How we would like to reinterpret the original, and this is a definition that you're going to find. Pareto efficiency, a state of allocation of resources. And we're interpreting allocation of resources as food, shelter, and education.
And free time.
And time,
of course.
In which it is impossible to make any one individual better off without making at least one individual worse off. We're saying that within the context of that kind of definition, you could take the human renewable energy measure and accomplish just this.
You can make
You
people
can-
better off without
without
hurting,
harming
somebody else.
because they have already got their platform that they can stand solidly on, their platform where they have their food, shelter, and
And
education.
the question is what has not been done in the history of mankind that we can figure out. You've had Buckminster Fuller talk about a kilowatt hour to measure humanity. You've had Plato. You've had all down the history of mankind talking about a way of equalizing or a way of making humanity so we don't kill one another. And Bucky, I think, is the best I can find so far. But we are saying that's the first time. It's the first time in history we can use physics to measure
The energy units
the energy
represented by the
units.
food, the shelter, and the education.
And the time factor that a human being lives. These are physical
And how,
dynamics. They're physical. You know you won't live more on the average of 80 years. If you look at the I guess I'm blanking on the name, a scale of how long a human being lives, given the proper foods and water, it's about 80 years of age. In some countries, it's a lot less because they don't have proper water, or proper education. It's called
education, medical and education.
medical facility. But on the average, a person can live comfortably between 70 and 90 years of age. So let's take an average of 80
Well,
years.
I think you're talking about developed countries.
Well, even
Europe
so, when you look at zeitgeist moving forward, that's a very heavy duty study went into what's going on in the world, and we should look at that. But we think we found an answer, and it's so important for us to do these programs because we feel as though maybe 10 years from now, or 3 years, or maybe never, but someone's going to say, wait a second, there's somebody talked about this measurement that's really important, that we base it on physics,
and it's
not subjective.
Physical energy units.
Physical energy units that people require, and that's how our economy must work. And it's not subjective, it's objective measurement. It's objective measurements, not subjective measurements. And it's so important because if I told you today, Dennis, I'm going to ask you a question, so hopefully you're there. If I told you today that it's 200 degrees today, what would you tell me?
Well, my first question would be, are you saying Celsius or centigrade?
It doesn't matter. It's 200 degrees Celsius or centigrade.
Wow. Okay.
Would you believe me?
No. Well, if we had global warming, if things got worse, I would believe.
Well, would you believe me that it's 200 degrees today, right now, either Celsius or Fahrenheit? Why wouldn't you believe me?
I would not believe you because it's never been that hot.
You wouldn't believe me because you'd probably be dead. It's an impossible measurement for human beings to be able to converse at 200 degrees Celsius or Fahrenheit. It's well above the boiling point. And we would probably be dead. And that's because we understand what that measurement is. That's why we would disagree if I told you you're 500,000 miles away from me. You'd say that's impossible. You're on the same planet. You couldn't be 500,000 miles away unless you're on a different planet, right?
Correct.
So those are things we agree upon. They're measurements we can't change. And that's exactly the same as what we're talking about with the HRM. It's a measurement you can't change. We just haven't put it into the vocabulary yet. We need to be able to say that all human beings must have their education, food, and shelter by laws of physics. It cannot be changed. And then once we agree to that, then you can put it into the political world and you can then measure it. It's simple, but I'm hoping that somebody, now what you could do about this, if you choose, I'm going to tell you this again, about halfway through the program, I was told to say this at least twice. You do not need to send us money. You do not need to join a group. If you understand what
You're
we're
already
saying,
part of the group. You're part of the human
you are
species.
part of the species already. Just use your brain, either your nature-given brain, or your God-given brain, to take whatever you can figure out to get this name out. The human renewable energy measurement. Measure out. Get it to people to talk about it. Get it into the vocabulary worldwide. If you speak Spanish or French or German or Greek, whatever Dutch, whatever you put it in your own words, get it out to your people in your countries. Even though the countries are all one world, we're all one group. We're all one species in this planet. It's just man-made divisions and kings united to control the wealth. What you hear when there's a presidential election, you hear immediately about gays in the military or gays' problems. You hear immediately about the personal problems of how great our government is, or how great this country is, and how bad that country is. Tell them why they need us. When you hear about,
And meanwhile, they're uniting with each other at the power level and the wealth level that they're
they're
at. So
controlling
they
the
know
politics.
that by dividing us, they can control us.
They-
But by uniting themselves, they can control the whole
planet,
the
the
whole
whole
story.
economic planet. And that's what's happening now. Gladiator sports, just like the sports we have now. People rally around sports because it really doesn't do any difference. Cooking shows, botany shows, all these, they keep your mind off of the true thing. The one that's controlling your life is putting you into work every day doing a job you can't stand that does absolutely nothing to help humanity. You're in traffic, you see bumper to bumper traffic, and you're wasting tremendous energy to push some papers back and forth. Why? For insurance reasons, to make money. And people worship money, so we need to get that away from that and get it to where they work, where they understand that all humanity must have their basic needs met. No one should be killing one another. It's such a simple idea, and it's been going around from the beginning of time. But now, or at least for the last 5,000 years, because I think, according to people who studied this, mankind worked pretty much in cooperation. That's how we grew. And then when we had abundance, then we had competition. And if you look at what's happened just today, you see two big stationery stores merging because they don't want to compete. They want to cooperate. But they're cooperating for the wrong reasons. They're cooperating to
increase their
to
profit.
increase profit margin,
Right.
not to help humanity. We need to cooperate to help humanity, not to take away from humanity. The United Kingdom cooperated to make sure they can take more slavery for themselves, for the kings. That's what the United Kingdom was all about, wasn't to help humanity. Even though it does, in a funny way, you do help some peoples marginally by increasing the wealth. That's where the trickle-down theory theoretically works. But it doesn't work in today's market. It doesn't work. It's not working. When you realize that only a very small percentage of the world population has more basic wealth, and while people are still dying. That wouldn't matter if they had more wealth than anyone else, as long as nobody's dying and no one's being shot or killed or moved out of their homes.
Or their country.
Well, say homes.
Right, their homes.
Their homes. The countries is irrelevant.
Well, that's another subject.
But anyway, I just want to get this out, and I think it's important. And Dennis, I like that when you spoke earlier today, we talked about someone being smarter, like a doctor being smarter than a ditch digger. I don't think that's true.
Well, that's social Darwinism.
That's something right. It's
implying that some people are more worthy than other people.
And it simply isn't true just because you have a degree.
People are different, but they're not more human, more worthy.
They're going to die about 80 years of age, more or less. They're going, now, there are certain people who just can't learn. They're not meant to go to school, but they're great as far as digging ditches, and they've learned how to survive very well. reasonably
Well, that's not
comfortable.
the only option if you don't go to school.
Right, you don't have to go to school.
No, I mean to dig a ditch.
Right,
Yeah,
you may want to.
There are lots of people.
You learn without going to school. As a matter of fact, you can learn. I don't think, I'll give you, for instance, isn't that guy who started Microsoft, he flunked out of some of the best colleges in the country. And he built he built it in his garage. He didn't go
Well,
learn.
he had a
anything.
lot of wealthy connections.
Yeah, 'cause he didn't
So,
he had
that,
free time.
right, well, that's,
Free time he had. But that's what was the important thing.
but that's another example, of the correlation between the rich, having access to the best technology, the best people to communicate with, to move their ideas forward. And so that's one of the advantages. They all live in similar neighborhoods. They all, as I said, meet each other in school and are promoted to the best universities. I think he was in Harvard, right, for a year or so.
He flunked out of that.
And not really. I think he just left because he wanted to start his business
Well,
with
leaving
his
or
friend.
flunking out, you normally don't.
He saw the potential of just starting the business.
Yeah, what am I going to
What's
school
the point, right?
And there's a lot of people who I know a fellow who did Zeitgeist Moving Forward. I guess his name is Joseph something, or it's not his real name, so it doesn't matter. But he realized that that he was going to cost him too much money to go to school, so he decided to become a filmmaker. He made a fortune on the Zeitgeist movies, and he put that money back to the system. Anyway.
I'm wondering if that cursor shows on.
No, it does not.
Okay.
So anyway,
I want to go back to the definition of Pareto efficiency again, just to bring us around full circle, and also to, the man himself. He was an engineer, and engineers are very interesting mindsets. My father was one, and he they think they're not trying to advantage any. That's why this definition really fascinates me, because he's actually stating something that's a very engineer-like way of thinking. The allocation of resources in which it is impossible to make one individual better off with making at least one individual worse off without making at least one individual worse off. He's not thinking, you help me with this. I want.
He's not thinking like the worst of the world's thinking. He's thinking, is there a way? Is there a way?
He doesn't have a secret agenda,
right.
I think is what I'm saying. He sounds like a person who didn't have a secret agenda. But right away, when you read these other statements that follow the interpretations of what he's saying,
they have an agenda.
They have an agenda. They want to reinforce the status quo, the social Darwinism of our economic system. And I don't think that's what he had in mind, because he was an engineer, and I'm just guessing that he thought like an engineer. And even though he was making some statements about economic efficiency, I don't think he had a social Darwin agenda or a status quo agenda. And that's why I would like, at least to raise the idea that a statement of this kind made in the 1920s is something that we should take another look at in terms of how to interpret it. And I think it can be interpreted in a fair way so that it really does not allow any individual to damage another individual by the allocation of resources, or and you can call resources food, shelter, and education, and lifetime, which is what we define it. But you can also, say wealth resources, physical things. These physical wealth resources now are disproportionately influencing politics, the way that people view each other within religions, between religions, between races, between even now they're trying to set up this presidential election in terms of the sexes against each other. That like the Republican nominee who they assume is going to be the nominee will promote his maleness against the presumed female candidate on the Democratic side, and it'll be her. He's saying that he's trying to make it a war of the sexes. How many women are going to come out to vote for the female nominee, and how many men are going to come out to vote for the male? What are the tensions between the sexes?
He's smart enough to subconsciously set up a division.
They're dividing. They're trying to figure out where they can put the wedge and divide people, and it's always that, and always the same subjects come up of abortion, homosexuality, gay, lesbian, transgender.
Now it's the bathroom.
And endlessly.
My God, just put a damn. If it would have cost the legal work, put a bathroom. That's for anyone. Like you have a changing table for people who have a kid to bring in. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is insanity what's going on in the media here. And it's set up just to keep your mind off the way the economic system is running. The only one who's talking about the economy in the political realm is Bernie Sanders. The only one who's talking about the economy who has some real clout around the world is the Pope. Mm-hmm. But no one is picking up on that. No one is picking up on the serious problem that people are being shot every single day, and we can do something about it. People are being moved out of their homes every single day, and we can do something about it. We can do something about not the inequity of wealth, but the fact that the wealth is allowing themselves to kill other people. We can have all humanity have their basic needs met, and still people can still be ambitious and still make excess money. However, they're not hurting another human being. And that, I think, is what
it was what Pareto had in mind.
Right.
It's interesting, and when you read the interpretations of his work, his definition, and all I have is his definition, I have to admit. I have not read in Italian his original work, nor the translation, which anyways, I can't even get access to right now, but I can try if I want to go further into this. But I feel like the interpretations do protest too much. They saying it makes no statement about equality or overall well-being of society. Pareto efficiency is a minimum notion of efficiency and does not necessarily result in socially desirable distribution of resources. So they're pounding and pounding this. They protest too much. And they're making sure that you don't, as we are trying to turn our minds to interpreting what this individual is saying.
And he's saying what we think he's saying what we're saying, that all humanity must have their basic needs met.
So that they won't be damaged by people who have more than that,
right. And that's what Pareto is saying. And people,
that's what we're saying he's saying.
And a lot of our very theoretically, as Dennis would call them, smart friends, who are very well educated, but they're not smart, don't see it. But when you talk to someone who doesn't have the education, they see it clearly because they haven't been brainwashed.
Well, there's
that
a certain,
is the problem.
If you become an economist presently, you say, oh, that's what I want to study. in my college or university, you're going to be taught the definitions of the day for every kind
And
of.
if you don't believe them,
And then
if you don't follow through with them, you
and-
don't get your degree.
Right, you have to follow, you have to give back to your professor with tests and whatever, what they have given to you.
Pounded into your brain.
And if you go on with, these pages that I got, my information that we're using today from, if you keep on reading down, all of a sudden it turns into
They reverse it.
equations and indecipherable. I mean, you'd have to have committed your mind to this way of understanding equivalence and math and calculus and translating it into economic
Not physics.
economic
Right.
terminologies that are, the symbols and everything that only economists understand.
Not physical.
So right away, the blind is coming down. You can't go this far because only a few people understand
A
this.
matter of fact,
It's like the oracles of long ago, or like the prophets. No, this is not for you to understand. Only a few people can go this far.
I want to
And-
compare the economy.
So don't even
I want
try.
to compare the economy
Don't have an
to
opinion.
the stock market. The stock market has its own language,
Right.
and if you realize
So
the
does
stock market,
economics.
so does the economics, and it has its own language, and it's being controlled by big money. If I have a lot of money and I buy one big stock, stocks go up. I can control the stock market. I can build machines to skim off the stock market. I can do all this stuff. So to make money, it has nothing to do with the physics of humanity. It also, people talk about
Physics of living.
If we,
The physics of
of
living.
of
life.
of the physics of life. If in fact we say that giving people excess money or printing money, as Dennis say, we can print that money in the trillions, not the billions, that would create inflation. Well, the biggest inflation maker we have is the stock market. Of course, it makes money on money, not money on helping anything
Which
to
is
do with
exactly
humanity.
what the 400 wealthiest people in the United States are doing. They're making
Money
money
on money. Right. It has nothing to do with reality as far as physics. So we're saying that the human renewable energy measure is a measurement based on physics and reality. Age, lifespan, that's measurable. The amount of energy units you need for food and shelter, and those are measurable items, and you could put a mathematical axiom on that and come up with a real number that's based on physics. And physics, my friend, doesn't lie. You can't tell me the sun isn't going to come up tomorrow. You can pass a law that it's not, but it wouldn't work. You can pass a law that all you need is 200 calories a day to live. You'll starve to death in a short amount of time.
It's physically obvious.
It's physically impossible to do. And that's what, and you can say, well, you've got to work 12, 15 hours a day. Yes, to make your basic needs met with what people are doing now, but that's a form of slavery. And if you go for an education in this world and you wind up having to come out and paying money out, and the money relates to your hours of labor, that's another form of slavery, and people just don't understand that. We're trying to get it so all the economic system does is based on physics and a basic number. And what you can do, again, I'm going to explain what you could do about it. Here's what you don't do. You don't join our group because we don't have one.
Well, the group is the human species. You're already part of it. We made that point.
You don't, I know, but I'm doing it again because in the emails we get, we say we don't give out the answers enough times. So I'm doing it over and over again. You don't send money, but here's what you do. Here's what you could do if you choose to do. You use your brain to figure out how we get this measurement into the vocabulary. That all humanity must have their basic needs met, their education, food, and shelter for a minimal amount of life work.
Which would maybe equate to 1 day a week that is, that work effort is applied
Every day.
only to the energy units of survival and not to money. It isn't
It has nothing to do with money. Money's not the thing.
Then you open the free market to all your other efforts.
And there are
for the
many
rest of
ways
the
to
week.
do this, by the way. There's many ways to accomplish this, especially in today's world with the technology we have. We can easily design the currency that we use, the specific things, like say to build solar panels or to build schools. And once that money is printed with a barcode on it, the minute it hits the banks, it's gone. So you can't make money on money, but you've actually supported physical people to build your solar panels or build your schools or build your roads. Essential physical infrastructures.
Right.
And then the money is destroyed, so it doesn't create inflation. There's definitely, and if I can think of it, I know that people are out there who are smarter than I am in this field who can come up with a better idea. So if I could do it, you could do it. And you just got to be able to get the concept across.
The concept, first has to be become like natural for people. Oh yeah, that's why haven't we done that? That's
it's obvious.
Unbelievably important. And then there's a transition. This doesn't happen overnight. There's a transition. It's hard to imagine the transition right now, but if the mindset is right, the transition will start to occur. That will bring us to the point where we're just saying that it'll probably be just the equivalent of 1 day of work effort, life work effort on the part of each individual when they're at that age, from 18 to 65. Only one of their days of their work effort will be necessary to accomplish the social contribution that will then give them food, shelter, and education as far as they can educate, want to be educated or can be educated or whatever. They choose what kind of education they want to go forward with. And it promotes individuality, because then you have time. You can make a decision. Okay, do I want to commit the rest of the days of the week to the free market and making money so I can buy things that I think I want?
Your wants, right.
That'll be part of the equation. There'll still be people promoting products to you constantly. You need this, you need that. But maybe it'll be, the dynamic will change in ways that we can't predict.
Okay, go ahead.
And it is, this, there's a transition, as I suggest, that will occur. And there's no way of knowing how long it will take. Just like, any incredibly important and what would be the word? It's inevitable. I mean, it's either going to happen or it's not going to be able to continue.
Music's here. We're on our way out. Dennis, thank you. Susan, thank you. Thank you all for listening. And we'll be back again on Sunday on the front stoop, the longest stoop in the world. This coming Sunday. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Some lives go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news of energy, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone. Well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.